Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. Have an amazing show for everybody today. What do we have, Crystal?
Indeed, we do. A lot of interesting things happening in the world. So Trump fires the statistician who gave him jobs report numbers that he was not too happy about. So we'll talk about those numbers.
That he was not too happy about. So we'll talk about those numbers and also the fallout from that firing. Trump is also contemplating a Ghislaine Maxwell pardon, and she has been moved to a cushy club in Soccer Town. Actually, town that I was born in. Got all the lowdown on that one. I'll try to get some inside scoop on her and Elizabeth Holmes' relationship. All right, I'll try to report back. In addition, bunch of updates with regard to Israel, but we had Mike Huckabee, Steve Wickoff, and Mike Johnson all visiting Israel, so we have some updates there. They are issuing an ultimatum to Hamas as the starvation continues. TikTok is installing a former IDF censor on their platform as the all-out assault on campus free speech continues from the Trump administration. Tim Dillon making some pretty, I would say very incisive comments about Bari Weiss's free press, and the reason that she is garnering the valuation for her company. That she has been able to court $1 billion. Yeah, okay? We've got a lot to say about that one, having a little bit of knowledge about media companies and what their actual value is. So, we'll dig into that, and we also have a fantastic guest, Jasper Nathaniel, who has been relentlessly focusing on what is going on in the West Bank, of course. While all of our eyes have been on Gaza, understandably, the project of annexation. He says, in the West Bank, it's basically complete. And you'll recall this was a key campaign promise from Trump directly to Maryam Ad. And they are making good on that pledge to her. So, a lot to get to there, But we also considered just blowing out the whole show so Sager could express his extreme disgust. For 2 hours at the, Rose Garden potential in the Gilded Ballroom, also that's being I desperately wanted to go off, but one day perhaps that I will have a guest on from the White House Historical Association or something. These are things that absolutely zero other people care about but are deep. I hope so. Listen, I would hope that Americans have a veneration for aesthetics, for history, for the way that our White House should look to the world, and to not turn it into a Mar-a-Lago or Saudi Arabian style estate. But I don't. No, I've started to give up in terms of that, but perhaps you're right. Perhaps you're right. Maybe we can garden as just as grotesque. Maybe we can negatively polarize liberals into caring about some of these things because they hate Trump. I'm fine. It's a big tent. It's a big tent and I'm welcome anybody else in there. Before we get to that, we do have the show available on Facebook now. Apparently, that was something some people are asking, so we've got links down in the description. You want to share it there on Facebook. If you're active on the platform, go for it. It is available there. And before you know as well, we have the show, of course, Breaking Points, where you can support us monthly. And yearly memberships has been tremendously helpful. You guys saw our interview with Alyssa Slotkin went massively viral. It's one of the most viral things that we've done in quite some time. Our interview, just followed later on by the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. The whistleblower, the former Green Beret, Anthony Aguilar. Similarly, I've received a ton of feedback, and just inbound in terms of people who have had that. So, our ability to do these news-making interviews is entirely propped up because of our premium members. So, breakingpoints.com, if you are able to help us out. If you can't do that, no worries. Just remember, subscribe to this YouTube video or if you listen to a podcast, take a favorite episode, send it to a friend. It's tremendously helpful to us with that. Let's start with the economy, as Crystal said. So, Donald Trump, the president, has now fired the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Go and put this up there on the screen, removing the official quote. Overseeing jobs data after a dismal employment report. So, you may ask, what the hell is going on here? And so all of it stems back to a report on Friday after a new BLS report on jobs which showed some precarity in the U.S. economy as well as some previous revisions. And so this is a big question. It showed just 73,000 jobs added last month. 28,000 to 158,000 fewer jobs were created in May and June than had previously been estimated. Quote, the report then suggested the economy had sharply weakened during Trump's tenure. A pattern consistent slowdown with economic growth during the first half of the year, and an increase in inflation during June that appeared to reflect the price pressures created by the president's tariffs. So, who was this person? She was nominated by Biden in 2023, became the commissioner of the BLS in 2024, January of 2024. They usually serve 4-year terms. The Senate confirmed her 86-8. J.D. Vance did vote yes, in case anybody is wondering. Much of this is about these revisions and just to explain a little bit. Behind this. Because I think it's actually fair for people to be like, how does this all happen? The BLS, the census, and all of this, they're not the most efficient agencies, and in some ways it's almost difficult to blame them. You are trying to get a full survey of the U.S. economy using statistical sampling and all of these very outmoded ways. Now, the census in particular is the most outmoded because it's constitutionally mandated the way that they do it, and in fact, there was an effort to revitalize and change the way that the BLS conducts its employment data. Would anyone like to tell me what happened to that agency in that effort? Oh, right? It was fired by Howard Lutnick in his first week while he was in office. And so that's what happened over at the BLS, just in case anybody's wondering. The ability to actually modernize the data was done within the first week of the Trump administration. Very efficient. Way to go, guys. Yes, very efficient. So then now we have an efficient data, but people are like, how does this continue happening? And again, it's largely because the snapshot that they get after that month after more accurate payroll data and other comes and causes revisions. This happened during the Biden administration. It's now happened during the Trump administration. The wild swings are actually more reflective of the wild and changer nature of our economy. I'm not defending the numbers themselves. I agree it's ridiculous that we don't necessarily have such a quick snapshot. At the same time, it's 330 million people, 50 different states. It's the biggest economy in the history of the world. It's not like Einstein. It's not so easy to just be like, oh, how much money did we make today? Or something. Right, so this is a very inefficient system, but part of the thing is, and it has battled presidents since all time, but I am laying it out. I'm trying to as fairly as possible to say the revisions themselves, while wild and crazy, are not necessarily inconsistent with the wild and changing nature of all of our economic policy over the last 2 years. If I could build on that. So, in addition, in the same way that there is a lower response rate to polls, making it more difficult to poll, what they rely upon for the core of the data that they collect to compile these jobs numbers is surveys that go out to businesses and also, public institutions, etc. And so the response rate has gotten lower over time. And so initially when they report those numbers out, it's not like they've gotten all of their survey data back. So revisions, they always do revisions. That's nothing new. The extent, the size of these revisions is no doubt notable. And I think that the things that I saw pointed to are number one, this is just sort of like, the quality of the data is degrading over time. That's number one. Number two, as Saga was pointing out, a lot of actually the later survey results that come in were from public institutions. Public sector institutions. And they had taken a job hit because of Doge and because of all of the cuts in government spending, etc. So, that may have added to it. And then number three, just the fact that the economy is so topsy-turvy. Right now, all of the late survey data that came in after the original numbers all pointed in a more negative direction, whereas typically it'll be sort of mixed. What's coming in after the fact. Some of it will be more up. Some of it will be more down. So, more or less even out. So, that's from my understanding of reading into it. Why there was such a significant revision on these particular jobs numbers. And I mean, it does just kind of make a logical sense when you think of how all over the place Trump has been with the tariff policy in particular, that would make it more difficult to be able to ascertain exactly what the impacts are and why businesses would perhaps drag their feet in sending in their own information to the government. See, I feel foolish because we were selected as part of the business survey, and I completed it promptly even though it was a pain in the ass to go. Really, I told you that. Yeah, we were part of the I think we were part of the annual survey, and yeah, it was a huge pain. So, I understand why business owners out there don't want to do it. But thank you for podcast representation to the United States government for including breaking points in your survey. But with all of that being said, here is Donald Trump for his explanation for why he wanted to fire the BLS. Let's take a listen. Why did you fire the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics? Because I think our numbers were wrong. Just like I thought her numbers were wrong before the election on the monthly jobs report. Going forward, why should anyone trust the numbers? And you're right, no, you're right. Why should anybody trust numbers? You go back to election day. Look what happened 2 or 3 days before with massive wonderful job numbers. Trying to get him elected or her elected, trying to get whoever the hell was running. Because you go back and they came out with numbers that were very favorable to Kamala, okay, to trying to get him elected, trying to get her elected. And then on the 15th of November or thereabouts, they had an 8 or 900,000 overstatement reduction right after the election. It didn't work because you know who won, John. I won. So that's what the new Trump administration line here is. Here's White House Economic Council Director Kevin Hassick kind of talking more about that 800,000 revision. That came after Joe Biden withdrew from the race, but it was before the election actually. Let's take a listen. There was a 818,000 revision on making the Joe Biden job record a lot worse that came out after he withdrew from the presidential campaign. There have been a bunch of patterns that can make people wonder, and I think the most important thing for people to know is that it's the president's highest priority, that the data be trusted, and that people get to the bottom of why these revisions are so unreliable. So again, I mean, much of this is so you laid it all out. It's also apparently COVID destroyed the response record and all. I don't want to sit here and defend BLS or any of this data. CPI data, all of it, it is very spotty. People have accurately criticized it for years, but it's kind of what we have. And so from that, of course, it has tremendous impact on the overall U.S. economy projections for business investment, for the Federal Reserve, for the way, of course, that people make, investment decisions. The S&P 500 stock market. The stock market, by the way, reacted terribly to those jobs numbers. Possibly why you see why President Trump fired that person. But let's go and put this up there on the screen and just shows here the actual revision for where it looked from the original numbers and where they came down to. Now, obviously, if you're the president, and let's say in April you have a pretty decent number. As you can see, they're over 100. And then you see a revision down dramatically after so-called Liberation Day may not be so good for you actually. And, in fact, those 2 months after Liberation Day, which were the most volatile during tariffs, of course, now show a revision dramatically down, and even a modest increase from that point forward is probably more because of the pause that we saw in the majority of the tariff policy. Of course, August 1st, just a couple of days ago, a number of other tariffs did go into effect. It is remaining unclear, but the point actually that I want to make is that beneath the surface, this was all happening no matter what's going on. With all of the BLS, there's all kinds of other data out there. It's also hilarious to me watching Republicans be like, see, the GDP numbers are good. I'm like, hey, the GDP numbers were good under Biden. Does anybody think the economy was good? We're talking about the S&P 500. The S&P was at an all-time high as of a couple of days ago. And the S&P had to record years under Biden. Did the economy get better under Biden? No. I think, and this is where the disconnect between everyday living conditions. We're going to do this in a little bit. We're going to talk about a poor job growth and others that come to the, so-called blockbuster parts of the economy. And one of the major insights is that AI spending in particular is responsible for so much of our current GDP growth. But that again is not the U.S. economy. That's not manufacturing. That is not jobs or people who are working at lower wages. That has no impact whatsoever on your ability to purchase a house. There's a big chart going viral right now on the right about, the average 30-year-old and the ability to buy a house and all of that. It still remains one of the most fundamental questions, like really, of our time. But the point is, not only on the right, that's going viral. By the way, oh good, I'm glad. It's very much in my timeline. I want it to go everywhere. Everyone should be aware of it. Everyone should say, hey, what the hell is going on here? I was actually just looking at a current forecast. Even with all of this to late pal stuff, even with the Federal Reserve cuts, the forecast for 2025 interest rate is like 6.5%. That's still double what it was just 5 years ago. Are we ever going back to 3? Probably not, but 4 or 5 would be nice. Certainly can save people thousands and thousands of dollars whenever they're trying to do that. So, you can just look at the carrying cost. The purchasing price. Home prices still remain very, very high. Market is a disaster. Interest rates and all that are a problem. That's the numbers to me that matter, as long with wage growth. The S&P doesn't matter at all. At least for these purposes of analyzing how people feel about the economy. Well, And let's just stick on the firing of the BLS commissioner. Like, it's deeply disturbing, obviously. They had no issue with this lady when the jobs numbers that were coming out they thought benefited them. And in fact, part of why Trump was so hard hit by these revisions is because, first of all, it really does complete the picture. I mean, there was a lot of weirdness in the economy of like, okay, consumer debt levels are at an all-time high, inflation ticking up, you see consumer confidence is quite low, like, you see all these negative signs, but then the jobs numbers are hanging in there. It's like, how is that happening? And now it's like, okay, now it kind of all makes sense. Yes, the economy is just as bad as people feel that it is. This fills in the blanks. So, prior to this moment when these negative jobs numbers comes out, Trump had no issue with her. So, I mean, it just is really clear he didn't like the numbers. So he's firing the lady who put out the numbers. Now, just so people understand. And maybe this is a little comforting. He makes it seem like she just gets out like a pen and pad and is like, here you go. This is what she actually doesn't even know what they are before the announcement happens. Now there are, and it's not like just a 1 + 1. There's all sorts of statistical modeling and analysis that goes into this, and what I was reading is that, there are all these little micro decisions that you could sort of push in one way or the other. That over time could influence the job numbers one way or another. So the next person that they put in, who was this lady's deputy, by the way? So this is another like career official. This is not someone who, didn't put Janine Pirro in there or something like that. She's busy now. She's been confirmed for her other job. But in any case, this is a, career statistician. Another long-time career bureaucrat who's been put into this position. But if you're her or him, I'm not sure, male or female, if you're anyone else. Throughout the government, you've got this in your head now. Like, if I give the president some news that he doesn't like, my ass is grass. Like, I'm going to get fired. So, does that impact the way that you go about your job? Does it impact those little micro decisions that get made about how the statistical model is created? I think that the comment Trump made there, where he said, why should anyone trust numbers, was very revealing, and it harkens back to Stop the Steal. It harkens back to his fundamental ability and desire to reshape reality to his liking and to destabilize reality. It really is a very postmodernist presidency, where it's like, what even are facts and reality? And so this is just sort of the logical endpoint of a man in an ideology that really doesn't actually care about what the facts and the reality are. He cares about what's going to serve his personal interest at any given time. So this is sort of like a classic, cult leader, a technique or tactic. The more that you can just sort of create and assert your own reality, obviously, the more power you're gonna have over your followers and the people that believe you. So, I think it's also significant in terms of Trump's psychology and the way that he approaches power. And we have a super cut here of Trump previously talking about how much he liked the BLS numbers. Let's take a listen. The numbers were much better, as than projected by the media. In 3 months, we have created 350,000 jobs. Think of that, a lot of jobs that they created. That's what happened this morning. That was before the revisions. But now, let's go and put the next one up there on the screen. A6 Journal actually did a very good job here, and I'll just read directly from them. Job market data gets revised every month, but rarely are the revisions as negative as the ones in Friday. Now, what they say is that the last time there was such a large revision to the change over employment was in April of 2020, the height of the pandemic. Quote, worryingly, revisions have been consistently negative in 2025. The lower the Labor Department now lowering its initially reported job count every month through June. So, what happened? Monthly payroll came from the Labor Department's BLS statistics.